Hi everyone, my name is Darryl Govender. I head up the cloud services area for Synthesis, as Mike mentioned, and I'd love to take you through what we've built over the last 5 years as becoming a leading and top-rated AWS partner in South Africa, and with ambitions to go into Africa and further abroad. I think the first place to start is really to position what cloud is doing in the market and look a little bit at the trend and a little bit around the forecast. So to jump straight in, what we have right here is IDC. We borrowed some information from them, and it speaks to two things that I think are of significant importance for you to understand as an investor and for us as well in terms of how we tee up our business. And in later slides, I'll show you exactly how this applies. On the left, we look at the infrastructure as a service market, and we see the trend around public and private cloud as compares to traditional IT. And what you'll notice, and I think what's most interesting, is for 2020 last year, and I think no surprise here, the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's impacted the use of cloud from a global scale perspective, where we actually see a tipping point where private and public cloud actually are starting to overtake the traditional spend on IT infrastructure to provide the services that we all enjoy and love. And the ongoing trend over time forecast here up to 2024 that speaks to that growing adoption and then fundamentally fuels our interest and expertise, or growing expertise and capability in that space to provide those services to our customers. Now, just to explain a little bit more on the left, the 64% that we see out on 2024 for the graph, of course, AWS, as we know, is a leader in that space. If you look at other information sources such as Gartner's Magic Quadrant around infrastructure and platform services, they echo the same sentiment and have done for the last 8 to 9 years. And I mean, that's part of why we strongly follow or pursue an AWS route primarily. But of course, conceptually, the ability for us to move across cloud and provide this capability broader as we see South African companies and around the world, actually, it's really to adopt a multi-cloud approach and posture as well. And that's some of the things that we'll be looking at in future. Now on the right, what we've got alongside that is to move away from the infrastructure as a service play, because that speaks specifically to platform provider value, AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. And it starts to bring into focus, and this is where Synthesis plays, the access to a $1 trillion forecast in 2024 pool or opportunity for service providers in professional and managed services. This is including software as a service providers, third-party vendors, etc. And again, Synthesis included. That's us playing in quite a significant space. And as we can see from a data perspective, quite a significant opportunity in terms of how we can assist customers. And again, backed by the trend that says cloud is kind of eating the world at the moment. It is really the trend to get behind and to follow. And happy to say that we've built, again, one of the leading capabilities in South Africa that we're looking to take abroad with us. I wanted to touch just quickly on the Cape Town AWS region. So I'm sure you know that last year we actually got a Cape Town a region, an AWS region, and capability with a whole host of services, 80 plus at the moment in Cape Town. And what that's afforded is the opportunity for more customers. And what we're seeing is across multiple industries, across many different tiers, not just the large enterprises that are starting to take a keen interest in AWS and in general cloud technology. So, and alongside that, there's the value that it brings to us as a South African economy. As I mentioned here, we've got the creation of 100,000 new jobs within South Africa alone, just from the creation of the AWS region. And of course, AWS further entrenching more support capability in terms of headcount, in terms of staff that can assist customers and partners like ourselves to deliver those value-added services. I'll talk through some of that adoption capability and what cloud really is helping to provide, and later on talk about how that's helping some of our customers as well. I think an interesting position now, moving away from just the market trend and what's happening with AWS in the region. I think the key thing to position is why Synthesis? Why do we do this? Like why? What fuels us? What fuels the growth and the interest? It's not tech for the sake of tech. It's not innovation for the sake of innovation. We fundamentally believe that we can create substantial change in consumer lives through the enablement of platforms such as cloud. And you'll see later from my colleagues, Archie, Darren, Chart, Elmarie, etc., where they're talking about how we're using these types of platforms to really help fundamentally the guy on the street, so to speak. As an example, if you just think back or think on your current experience or relationship with technology, customers or, well, our customers or providers, let's call them generally, are expected to have these always on capabilities. They're expected to add more features and functionality at significant pace, and they're expected to actually pass the cost savings that should come from a technology adoption onto their end consumers. So myself, as an example, just using whatever cloud-based service or whatever provider, whether it's F&B from a banking perspective or Netflix from a media perspective, the expectation is that I get access to more of the features and functionality that I love at those lower cost points. And I want it to happen a lot sooner. I mean, the expectation is that it's, again, always on, always available. And these are the things, these are the tenets that really make a platform such as AWS quite important. And again, why we back from a technology perspective, the entirety of our growth and capability off the back of cloud. Now, to focus a little bit on what we've done as Synthesis. So it's been a long time in the making, really. We've been building a lot of momentum over the last 7 years, where we started just by experimenting with our own capability, with our own needs, our own requirements, and saw a very obvious gap in the market from a consulting perspective. And since 2017, we focused very much on that partner journey with AWS. So as an example, we are an advanced consulting partner. We've got a host of competencies that set up proper differentiation in terms of local competition to us, as well as actually abroad. We're actually one of the top partners, definitely from a sub-Saharan perspective. And I think, going forward with our AWS partnership and our eye on this premier partner, which is the top tier partnership with AWS, and again, creating significant differentiation for us further as we go. I'll show you a little bit later around how these competencies, as an example, tie back to customer value in the form of co-fund opportunities with AWS and program benefits. And then lastly, to touch on, and I'm quite proud of this, 175 plus AWS certifications across a team size of about 75 unique guys. We've got about 120 plus in the delivery team, but what we'd love is fundamentally to cover 100% with the certification across our team capability. And look, the honest view, and Elmarie will tell you more about it a bit later, is certification is not competence. We back our certification with significant experience in the market, as you can see through our growth timeline. And that really is the way that we'd like to build and continue to encourage our customers to invest with us. Now, in terms of how customers actually engage, this kind of slide speaks to our business as it stands now. Now, conceptually, this model applies to any cloud provider. So yes, today we've built it off of AWS and we've got a significant AWS presence and capability, but this applies, and it's going to be a future-proofed capability and vision for us to exact against Azure, GCP, etc., whoever else comes down the line when the timing is correct for us to do so. But what we've done is we've gone through the cloud adoption kind of curve. We've tried to marry how customers actually adopt the cloud in reality, and then offer that as slices to actually take them through that as a guided tour. So just to explain it a little bit more, typically what we'll see is customers they want to dip the toe, they want to test something innovative, they want to test a proof of concept, or just a project, maybe a trial migration, etc., for core system, or maybe an internal system. And fundamentally, that's that project space where they're just getting a feel for AWS or cloud and trying to see if it's a good fit. In the 7 years I've worked in the business of cloud, I would say I've never seen a customer not transition to the next phase, which is really to enable. So to create the guardrails for mass consumption of the cloud in their organization. And from that enablement, setting up things, for the actual cloud adoption, security, compliance, think of those types of frameworks that you would need, or guardrails that you would need in place. The next very obvious step is to actually start migrating applications into that environment. So we do everything from a host of assessment, business cases, etc., to prove what migration can look like commercially from a DevOps or engineering perspective, etc. It really is a holistic kind of view of this, and the actual execution. So advisory plus execution type capability to help our customers do that. And we've seen massive growth in that space now. If we just dial into our South African customers, a lot of them are enabled for consumption into AWS, and they're actually enabling the rest of their their territories into Africa to utilize AWS as well. And we're seeing massive growth in terms of that build and migrate. So you'll see again later our data and digital capabilities, how they're helping those customers consume onto the environments that we're helping to enable. And then lastly, we speak to reinvention. This is the AWS native view that I think all customers really want to get towards, because and I spoke earlier about the actual end consumer view. They really want everything to be available now. They want the features faster. They want it in their hands as soon as possible. They want it to be reliable, and they want it to be at low cost. This is speaking to that movie of once you're in that cloud native kind of view, you're kind of riding that wave of really getting the technology to work for you. And again, not technology for sake of technology to create business outcome for our customers, which I'll speak to in the next slide as well. Now, underpinning a lot of this, the Managed Cloud Center is something I'll speak to briefly, but it's just a new way for us to engage. It focuses on customer experience. It talks about longevity. We're talking about annual recurring revenue and annuity type incomes through this model, not just project-based implement, and further underpinned by our managed services capability. And just to touch on that briefly, it's to say we're building a next generation, or as the industry would term it, a next generation managed service capability that's not interested actually in just break, fix, support SLA. It's looking at the innovation. It's looking at the optimization. How do we, again, take those business outcomes that our customers are looking to create, and how do we marry technology to those business outcomes, and how do we guarantee a certain amount of capability and service level to do those types of things. And then further, what we believe and where we're seeing one of the biggest gaps is training from a capability perspective, not just in cloud, just probably across the board, but definitely on cloud where things change on the daily. As an example, AWS and their services, their host of services, well over 200 now. Things change so quickly that we're seeing our customers are struggling to keep up. And our model of co-creation that speaks to partner accelerated, we come in and we help customers to actually accelerate their journey in terms of, again, marrying tech to the actual business outcome. We're seeing that they're struggling to actually keep up, keep their teams afloat, etc. And we're trying to find pragmatic ways to marry, again, competence to and experience to the actual theory that we see out in the market. Typically, they really do address things at an abstract level, at a broad level, and we're really trying to dial it in to what the actual customer is trying to do and specific to their environment as well. I wanted to speak just briefly about the cloud value framework that we use. So everything that we do at Synthesis from a cloud perspective and broader is around best practice. So one of these things is the IDC about 3 years ago, they conducted a study at a global scale, 1,500 plus customers, to see what is the real value that customers get out of cloud. And could they explain it in a categorized way? And what they came up with is four distinct categories. One, that's cost savings. And from the study, you can see 8%, it's the smallest benefit, actually. I mean, if you think about it, it's moving a supply, it's a supplier move, whether it's on-prem or hosted by another provider into AWS, into the cloud. It's the smallest value that you actually get out of it. It still might be significant in the millions of dollars, sure, but it's the smallest actual benefit that you realize from moving to cloud. The majority, the lion's share, is really in staff productivity. So as an example, AWS and being able to move into a managed service perspective where there's all the operational burden is removed from the actual person deploying a solution. Think about a database as a simple example. That actually frees up a lot of time that allows a customer to repurpose their staff for the higher value initiatives. The other side of it is, and I suppose somewhat nebulous, the business agility side of it. But if we just zone quickly back to operational resilience, the fact that cloud providers build resilience into the architecture of their data centers, into their AZs, into their regions, that actually gets passed back to the customer in terms of trying to implement more complex technical solution, but in an easier, far simplified way. And then that leads back to business agility that takes all of this into mind to make sure that you can get those features, get that functionality out faster without worrying about the actual operational precedent, etc. that follows it. So a lot of what we're talking about here is what we bake into our engagements. So we want to expose these metrics to customers and take them through that journey, help them understand the return on investment of working with Synthesis and how we're actually accelerating them and moving their companies forward in the eyes of the actual end customer. I mean, I think that's the key thing that we get out of this, is the end customer is seeing the benefit of the work that we're doing. I'll speak to it quickly in in our customer slide in a little bit. Now, in terms of innovation, I think from a technical perspective, Synthesis very good. Been here for about 7 years now, and I would have to say, perhaps biased, but innovation-wise, from a technical perspective, very good. Very much about bleeding edge, early adoption from a technology perspective. From a commercial perspective and engagement perspective, what we've seen is there's quite a keen interest and need actually for us to tie back to the customer experience. And what we're working through, as an example, evolving our engagement models, is to say, how do we actually get closer to the actual domain that our customer is in, understand the pain points, understand the innovation that they're looking to do, understand the roadmap a lot more than on a typical project to project kind of basis. And how do we then utilize cloud to find a way to unlock that? And what we've done is typically any enterprise actually will establish a cloud center of excellence, and that's to enable the organization to consume cloud. It's engineering, it's financial, it's training, it's organizational change management, etc. How could we actually provide that as a service, and again, a partner accelerated service? So think joint venture, think shared capability to help drive the customer forward alongside Synthesis, and what are the mechanisms for us to subsidize that capability and pull them into the ecosystem. So everything's very much focused around how we can continually move them forward, give them a bit more around the metrics that we spoke about earlier, expose a lot of it to them, show them the return on investment for every rand literally that they spend with a provider such as Synthesis, etc. And how do we gear them over time to the higher value kind of offerings for us, as an example, managed services or training or any product type capabilities that we might have on the shelf, as well as how do we make sure that from a Synthesis and an investor perspective, that we're also gearing them towards this lifetime view, towards the higher margin capabilities at the right cost to our customers. So as an example, this is really a model that we're talking about with our customers right now in the cloud space that speaks to us understanding inherently what they're doing and finding the right value to cost ratio to actually service that demand. To briefly touch on our partner program, so this is something that actually creates differentiation for us. A lot of partners in the AWS ecosystem do not have access to this stuff. From a local perspective, the majority of them don't actually. So as an example, Synthesis have access to what's called the Migration Acceleration Program, Windows Rapid Migration Modernization Programs. They're all programs that are co-fund opportunities where AWS comes in. They fund Synthesis on behalf of the customer to help them get their workloads into AWS. So whether, like I touched on a few that were migration or modernize, we're talking about moving things typically from on-premise into cloud, but there's also opportunities for us to actually modernize from existing AWS base further into AWS as well. And AWS comes to the party to help us as a partner by co-funding those opportunities, i.e. offsetting the consulting spend for customers, and in some cases quite significantly, up to 75% actually. And in other cases, they provide AWS consumption credits to offset the customer spend on AWS. Of course, they're thinking longer term, how this is going to help them from a return on investment perspective. But from a Synthesis and a capital perspective and from an investor perspective, it means customers are more willing to actually work with us directly because we're significantly offsetting our costs through our partner status fundamentally. And just on pretty much my last slide, just to talk through some of the customers that we're working with. So cloud, I think for Synthesis, we started in financial services space. We started with software dev. Cloud has really unlocked the ability for us to go cross industry, cross territory, cross tier, across the board, really, in terms of how we can engage. And now it's a matter of us picking the right customers or the right problems, let's say, that are quite crucial for us to solve, and that we can build repeatable capability. And again, just manage the ability for us to earn earn against our customers, I suppose, and build more capability around product plays, etc., that can create more high margin and longer term relationships with our customers as well. So just to talk through a few of them, we've engaged from startup to large enterprise. As an example, with Investure, we built their product from scratch pretty much, and the same with GovChat. We built it pretty much from scratch, the entirety of the platform, the hosting, the infrastructure, the application itself, getting it to market. We've been through the entirety of the journey all the way to the larger banks where we're enabling their regions for consumption, as I mentioned earlier, and helping them to actually migrate and train through that co-creation model, train their employees as well in terms of how to run in the cloud. And then we're also offering that managed service capability as well. So it's that holistic kind of bag around what we've done. And over the last 7 years, significant exposure in the market, South Africa in especially. And Mike also mentioned an opportunity that we have in the APAC region. And this year, we're actually going to be looking at Africa, well, let's just call it broadly EMEA as well, and really trying to fine tune the right opportunities to take our experience through and make sure that we're growing our business accordingly. So thank you, guys. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk through.